So up to now, we've discussed in parts 1 and 2 mentalism, as well as correspondence and vibration. In this video, we're going to be looking at the principles of polarity in rhythm for part 3 of our 7 Hermetic principles of the Kybalion. Let's go into the principle of polarity. The principle of polarity is the 4th Hermetic principle, which is outlined in the Kybalion. It states that everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Let's go into the core concepts of the principle of polarity as explained in the Kybalion. The first is the dual nature of reality. This principle posits that everything in the universe has a dual nature, and that everything has two poles or opposite aspects. For example, hot and cold, light and darkness, large and small, high and low. These pairs of opposites are identical in nature but differ in degree. They are simply different manifestations of the same thing. What about the continuum of degrees? The principle suggests that opposites are merely extremes of the same thing with many varying degrees between them. For instance, temperature can range from very cold to very hot, with many degrees of warmth in between. I guess in this way we might think of things as being along a spectrum. Understanding this continuum helps in reconciling paradoxes and in finding harmony between what could seemingly be apparent contradictions. What about mental transmutation? The principle of polarity can be applied in mental alchemy, or what we would call or know as mental transmutation. By understanding that opposites are the same in nature, one can transform negative mental states into positive ones. For instance, hate can be transmuted into love by understanding and shifting one's perspective and emotional state. Let's go into our more detailed explanation of this. So we'll revisit the duality in nature that I've alluded to in earlier in this video. The principle of polarity highlights the inherent duality in all aspects of existence. Everything has two sides, two aspects, or two poles. These opposites, although seemingly distinct, are actually two extremes of the same continuum. Examples in everyday life. We have temperature. Hot and cold are perceived as opposites, but they are both degrees of temperature. There is no absolute line dividing hot from cold. They transition smoothly through varying degrees. What about emotions? Love and hate, joy and sorrow, fear and courage are all pairs of emotions that exist on the same spectrum. By shifting one's focus and understanding, it is possible to move from one extreme to the other. Just as an additional point, although this is not in Kybalion, you'd also have to think about the 0 point of these continuums, which is that the 0 point doesn't mean an absolute absence of anything. It just means a middle ground between two extremes. What about mental alchemy? Transmuting mental states. By recognizing the principle of polarity, one can consciously change their mental state. For example, one can shift from a state of fear to a state of courage by focusing on the similarities and moving along the continuum. In other words, fear is a mind killer. I must learn to face and control it. We can take fear and we can transform it into bravery. Practical application. Various self-help and transformational practices, individuals can transform negative emotions into positive ones, thereby improving their mental and emotional well-being. In other words, instead of just constantly having a hatred for everything, Maybe we should find the things that we like in it so that we can actually realize that we can have a form of love for things as well, and that hate doesn't have to define everything that we feel. So, the principle of polarity explains that opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. There are 2 degrees of the same thing, and they exist along a continuum. That's what I want to cover with polarity. Let's go from polarity now to the principle of rhythm. The principle of rhythm is the 5th Hermetic principle. It is described in the Kybalion. It states, everything flows out and in, everything has its tides. All things rise and fall, the pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm always compensates. So let's get into the core concepts of the principle of rhythm. The first that we're going to look at is called universal motion. This principle asserts that everything in the universe is in a state of constant movement, and that this movement occurs in rhythmic cycles. These cycles manifest as patterns of ebb and flow, or flow and ebb, rise and fall in all aspects of life and nature. The concept of rhythm can be observed in the seasons, the phases of the moon, as well as the tides of the ocean. Our next that we would like to look at is the law of compensation, right? That's the second thing we'll look at, the law of compensation. The principle of rhythm is closely tied to the law of compensation, which states that the swing of the pendulum to one side is matched by the swing to the opposite side. This means that the rise and fall, the forward and backward motion, are balanced and ultimately are equal. Understanding this law helps in anticipating and managing the natural fluctuations in life, whether they be emotional, physical, or situational. You know, it's like they say, right? Sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. Sometimes things go up, sometimes they go down. Application to mental states. The principle of rhythm can be applied to mental and emotional states, recognizing that moods and emotions follow natural rhythms of highs and lows. By understanding and anticipating these cycles, one can achieve greater emotional stability and mental resilience. In other words, we have to realize that we're going to be sad sometimes, we're going to be happy sometimes, we're going to be angry sometimes, we're going to be confused sometimes, we're going to be feeling at our best, we're going to be feeling at our worst. This is in accord with the cyclic nature of life. The principle of rhythm teaches that everything in the universe follows a cyclic pattern. There are periods of activity and inactivity, growth and decline, progress and retreat. These cycles are a natural part of the universe's functioning and are evident in all aspects of life. For example, we have the harvest, right? In other words, we're going to have a period where we're growing things, and then we're going to have a period where we have to harvest things, and then during the winter, we're not going to be able to grow things at all as we get ready for the change in seasons, at which point, sometime in the next year, with spring and summer, we'll be able to grow again, right? So we have periods of growth, spring, maturity, summer, harvest, autumn, and rest is winter. By basing our operations around these cycles, we can prepare for the periods in which we're not growing, and we can use our reserves during that time period to get through. Even the sleep-wake cycle, even in fluctuations in moods, there's always some sort of cyclical pattern that goes on. We can't always be in one particular type of mood or state, but we can definitely manage it better when we can prepare for it. Anticipation and preparation is that understanding these rhythms are natural and inevitable. Individuals can prepare for periods of low energy or negative emotions. This preparation allows for better management and less disruption. Neutralization. Advanced practitioners of Hermetic philosophy can also learn to neutralize the effects of rhythmic swings by maintaining a centered and balanced state of mind. This practice helps in minimizing the impact of extreme highs and lows. After all, why should we live life in the extremes when we can even things out more? Maybe move more towards the median or the mean, right? So for knowledge check, what does the principle of rhythm state about the nature of motion and cycles in the universe? And the answer, if you remember what we just discussed, is that the principle of rhythm states that everything flows in and out, rises and falls, and follows rhythmic cycles. The measure of the swing to one side is matched by the swing to the opposite side, indicating a balanced and compensatory motion. Understanding and applying the principles of polarity and rhythm can lead to greater harmony, balance, and control over one's life by recognizing the natural dualities and cycles that govern existence. Even, let's say, if you're living on a Caribbean island, there's going to be times when you are able to use your energy generators, and there's going to be some times where you're going to have to go without. Got to give it a break, right? Because, we don't have the ability to be like in America where we have constant energy output 24/7. America has a lot more resources than, say, a Caribbean island would. And so they're not used to the idea that when lights out at night occurs, that means you're not going to have access to electricity throughout the night. I hope this has been helpful for you. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate your support. I hope you appreciated this third installment of the 7 Hermetic Principles of the Kybalion. Have a wonderful day. I love you. Take care. Bye.